Hello, YouTube, Facebook, and the interwebs, Twitter, and beyond. Cuffy Proctor here to chime in on the national polling at 7%. Everybody's fired up, and it's great. But at the same time, I think that we shouldn't even really give a shit about that 7% on the polls. I mean, yes, it's important. It's another qualifying thing. I get it. This is where my concern comes in, and I guess my criticism of other Yang Gang not being more, we shouldn't be validating the polls at all. We should be treating them like they're the bullshit that they are. And by being like, oh, yay, we made 7%. Like, Paget is awesome and she's great at what she does, and I think it's phenomenal the type of energy that she brings to Yang Gang and people across the board. But it concerns me when like I see videos of hers and she's like, we might get into second or third, and no, dude, we're first. There is no other option. And I know that may not seem like it, but you really need to look at past elections, what other politicians have put in Iowa before, in the resources, what they had, the environment in the, I guess the the landscape for politics at the time is different than it is now. The internet has changed everything. We're seeing things manifest themselves instantaneous. We're seeing real fundamental monumental changes in politics and transformational shifts in consciousness. Humanity in general is going through a major fucking thing right now, whether you believe in it or not. Right now, the thing that I find most concerning is that people value the polls in any facet. Like, they really mean nothing. And if we start treating them and start giving them the weight that they should naturally get from the DNC's bullshit, like, we're just gonna play into that. We need to pretend like it doesn't matter to us. And this is where I guess I give people criticism, is that this is a zero-sum game. Like, we have no choice but to win this, all of it, every step of the way. And that's the way we need to treat it. We need to treat it as we're going to manifest these things by it not being an option for us to lose. It's just not an option. It's not even an option for second. We're number one all the way through. And it's, oh, I don't know if it's realistic. No, the fuck, it's not realistic. It is realistic. We are going to outdo what almost everybody is thinking. I'm going to say everybody, but almost everybody really is understanding the way of things, like where we really are. Not all of us, and I think that's the thing. We are gonna be number one, and I think the reason why is because people are done with the bullshit. If people go off polls, they're gonna have the same thing happen that happened last election, in which things were being shifted around. I think the polls were even off between Bernie and Hillary. I think Hillary had no real weighing in the election. She was a very unliked candidate, and Bernie probably would have beat Trump by a landslide had they not pulled the bullshit that they did. But they did. They pulled that bullshit, and they're pulling it now. But they can only do that. They can only squash three candidates so much, right? Like, it's three candidates. They can't keep a thumb across the scale. They could try, but it's not possible to really multitask that good. Also, it's the fucking DNC. They're not that good at it. Sorry to throw shade at the DNC, but they're historically bad at that stuff. And calculating is not their jam either, really, if you're looking at math and numbers. And that's why we need to stop getting hung up on these polls. Qualifying for the debate's important, and they see that because it is another way to make the case. But what he's doing right now, the boots on the ground, are calling people, is the bigger deal here. This is how we're really making these impacts. And so when I was listening in past weeks, people were like, oh, we might get third or fourth. We might really have the chance to get third or fourth. It's like, no. Okay, not to be like, I'm not trying to, that positivity, right? I don't want to be like, but no, you're wrong. Like, we might not have the chance. We are going to be number one. Like, I think that that's the attitude that we need to have, is not like a pretentiousness, but we just know that it's best for everyone that Yang wins this primary. And I think that that's the attitude that we're going to see start to swing in that direction. I do think that the other politicians are taking Iowa and New Hampshire for granted in some facet. But I also think that the conditions are really right for Yang in these weeks of him being on the ground by himself without having the interference from the other senators that are busy dealing with impeachment are only very good things for his campaign, because he was already putting in all of that. Now he's doing it on top of that. And the only person that's going to come close to that and gain ground with him, I think, is going to be people like Tom Steyer and Pete Buttigieg. I think that Bloomberg, again, like, this is the thing where Paget, you're awesome if you're listening. You probably aren't. But I think that you stop worrying about Bloomberg. He has zero value in this race. He's not going to gain anything, in my opinion. And I think that the polls are doing the best they can to adapt to the answers that they're getting. But it's not some abstract, right? I get that they're measuring, you know, Q-tips across New Hampshire and Iowa to get this older, uh, archaic method of poll surveying. Like, it's just not the same as it was 4 years ago, as it was 8 years before that, and 8 years before that. Like, it has gotten less and less reliable. It has become less and less reliable as we've gone on. And it's going to continue to become less and less reliable. Like, it's not valuable. Landlines aren't a thing anymore. Cell phones and these methods of calling people through different times, like, people are avoiding the calls. The people they do get through are usually people that are hyper politically engaged versus people that just aren't at all. What about all those people that you're not going to hear from, you're not polling? There's a ton of disaffected voters out there that are coming through for this campaign specifically. And I think that's the thing everybody keeps forgetting. And I know that, like, I don't want to say like Paget is forgetting this or other YouTube people are forgetting, because they're not. They're factoring this. I watch their videos very frequently and they are factoring that in. But let's also remember that the polls don't reflect those things also. And not only that it's like a small margin, no, it's going to be a big, massive difference. And where you guys are saying it's going to be like, it's 7%, well, it's going to be like 15%. No, I think you're wrong. I think it's going to be like 25%. I think there's a way bigger pool of people that are so done with stuff, that are also done with the left and the right and all this stuff, and the people that, like myself and other people that are libertarians and never voted before, that are coming into this. And then the young crowd, way more young voters than ever, and a lot of them are, you know pro Bernie or Yang, but Yang is peeling off a lot of those Bernie voters and Trump voters and centrist voters and Biden voters and all voters. He is the best chance to beat Donald Trump, and everybody it knows it. Even the people like Van Jones, or what's his name, Como on CNN. That, like, these guys just wrote him off, and then they're really valuing where he stands and the fact that he might be like, they could write him off a lot, but they're gonna be a point. There's gonna be a point where people are gonna be like, thank God for Andrew Yang. Like, America needs Yang. Like, thank whatever existence that is, that he is, that there's a perfect conditions for somebody like this, because we definitely need somebody like that that's kind of a more clear-eyed realist about things. And I think that traction is only going to continue in that direction. We're not slowing down. We're not like every other campaign. Even the higher energy campaigns like Pete, like, I just don't think that there's that much energy. I think that it's optics. Every single one of these campaigns are optics. except ours. And the funny thing is we have the best optics. And we're not trying. It's just naturally happening. The people are that don't need to try are the people that just it happens naturally for, because it's real, it's legit, it's genuine. It's not like even Obama needed to kind of really, have some sort of sense of optics. Like there's always that, painting a picture more so than what it actually is, but it doesn't need to happen this time around because it's just genuinely kind of middle of the road, dare I say, independence, independent, non-politician, everyday person, um, that maybe, he's not every day, he's had different life experiences than the rest of us, but it's not he's not billionaire. Like there's just so many very real facets that make him the prime candidate, that I think that we need to start treating it like a all or nothing Yoda perspective, that there is no try and it's do or do not. And I'm not big in absolutes. Like I don't um I don't subscribe to that. I think that there are gray areas all the time, but I think in this case, we need to start treating it like he's going to win every step of the way. It's going to shock everybody. It's going to be amazing, and we just need to know it in our heart. Not don't have doubt. Maybe you just need me to tell you that it's definitely gonna friggin' happen. I know it. I just know it in my heart. I don't know what it is. I never feel confident like any about anything in life. But for some reason, I'm just confident that it's just he's not even gonna have to try, because it's so natural and so real that the more people learn about it, the more it becomes more. The more his campaign becomes viral, the more it becomes popular and accepted, and then the less knee-jerk reactions there are to UBI. I think you're just going to see it spread like a catalyst, and it needs to happen like overnight, right? It needs to happen like that because we're in that position that even people in the libertarian spectrum are starting to see a lot of those things as a reality, that things are getting crazy and it's going to happen fast. We need to do it equally fast. Incrementalism is also important, though. And doing things in a way, if you want to eliminate government, there are some benefits to that, but you can't just do it overnight, I think is usually the argument that I would make in this. But the goal to eliminate that bureaucratic waste, I think, is it's a positive. So the thing is I just see so many people jumping on board all the time. And I think that people that were like, no, 6 months ago are now considering a real possible yes. So I really want you to reevaluate the way that you guys are all talking to people out there, because I think that it's important that we know that we can be a positive and not have to be condescending or rude or aggressive when it comes to things like the friends who know Yang beats Trump takeover. Like it's good that happened the way it did. Actually, I think that we needed to do that, because we gained way more people than we lost. Most of us are pretty positive and we're not aggressive and not trolling people, but sometimes there's a need for it, right? Because I mean, name recognition is name recognition, good or bad. It's still name recognition, and other people are going to hear about it. The angrier people are about it, the more people they're going to tell. So I hate to use that as an example because it's an angry situation, because it makes us look bad, right? But let's be real about it and not be douchey fucking elitists about it, because that's what got the Democrats in trouble to begin with. We don't need to be higher and mightier than everybody else. And at the same time, we can still, be positive and whatnot. But doing this by taking over a group like that, yeah, we may have some negative repercussions, but the overwhelming good that's going to happen because he's running such a positive campaign. Maybe we made some decisions by trying to be a little bit more aggressive and taking that over. But at the end of the day, it doesn't directly reflect his campaign. It does, but it doesn't because it's not. He didn't tell us to do it. Like he didn't, and the people who owned that group made that decision. It was their group. Sorry. At the end of the day, your opinion means zero shit because the person who was the admin, they created that group and they flipped it with the help of other people. And I'm sure we brought in other people, and we definitely did what Yang Gang does best and swarm the shit out of it. It needs to happen because at the end of the day, it's only going to benefit the rest of the country. Whether they like it or don't like it, they need it. They need UBI. The whole country does. Because if we don't do this, it's curtains. And I mean that. Real curtains. Like it could be a real quick, um, you know, decline to Western civilization if we don't make a really calculated decision on what we want to do moving forward. But you know what? It takes waves of energy to make change, and we are that wave of energy. And I love the energy that comes from Bernie and his crew, but I think that they're just gonna end up yang yang. Not to be overconfident, but we're gonna win this shit. And I don't think that there is any other option. And I think that that's exactly how Yang feels, and that's why he's running. And I can relate to that so very much. Not because I feel ever positive about what I'm capable of doing as a person individually. Um, Time has proven that I have been able to do things successfully and change people's minds and make real impacts. But that's not the reason why I do it. The only reason I do anything is because I feel like I have to do it and I'm compelled. And I can relate to that compulsion of patriotism in a way. Like I feel like it's like Edward Snowden in a way. You see something and you have to do something about it, whether you think you're the guy for the job or not. Like if there's nobody else that's going to do something and you're really you've got that moral responsibility to try to do something. And I think that that's what weighed on Yang and drove him to that point is he found that there's really nothing else he could have done to make it go quickly. And I think that that's the thing that we need to remember here is why he's running, and that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, like the Simon Sinek thing. Um, it's very, very true. It's why Apple and these certain, leaders and moguls of the world have made such a lasting impact. It's because it's driven on passion and why people do things. It's not what they do, it's why they do it. And that's why we're here. We don't care necessarily about Yang, not to discount him. I care, but he's awesome. He's a real personable guy. We couldn't ask for a better person to deliver this type of message, right? But also, it's the message. It's the UBI, it's the concept, the idea that's making the way and the traction. And he is just a vessel for that. And he wants to be a vessel for that. If he felt like he could have passed it on to somebody else, he would have. He doesn't want to do that. I can tell. He's not the type of person to try to, get really, power drunk. I could tell because I can relate to that, not wanting to feeling like you have to do something and being able to exude confidence and charisma from time to time because you have to, because it's a job, or in this case, he feels like it's a necessity to get to that point. Um, it sometimes it's just a defense mechanism. It's not always that person's just naturally extrovert. Like no, sometimes people play extrovert really well because they have to, because they want to do something impactful, make a difference, make a change. And at the end of the day, we can all relate to that. Really wanting to make a change and an impact, not for the sake of, um, you know, being remembered, but because it needs to change. So I'll leave you guys with that. And again, not to throw any shade at anybody else from Yang Yang. We're all working together. But I do want to be critical of you guys in your thought processes, because remember, if we're not considering the polls as valid because we know they're not. They're archaic methods of measurement. We need to really just kind of ditch them entirely, other than where they're absolutely necessary, which is qualifying for the debate. But you know, treat them like they are. Drag polls out into the light. They're not the end all be all, and a lot of them it's just based on garbage information that is not helping us gain any real understanding of where the race is going to be, and certainly not the older crowd, because they think that those polls that've been around their entire life that's predicted things the way before are going to predict this next one. Well, just remind them who won the presidency between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and how upset those polls were, how upset people were about those polls. But it's not that he didn't win. I mean, there's some coercion, there's some trolling happening from the Russian interference. I'm sure all that happened, but it was a perfect storm of a lot of things, and I think one of those things were the middle class being left behind, the Midwestern American getting left behind, a lot of people feeling like they were left out of the party and they just didn't have a choice but to vote for, the same old or something entirely new, even if it was a grenade to the political system. So remember, they're looking for something better. And a lot of people are considering, even friends of mine that are not gonna vote Democrat ever during the general, they want to see something different pop up. They want to see, even if they want to fucking scramble things up to screw the Democrats. I'm sorry, that's what Democratic primaries are for. They're not for choosing the lesser of the two evils. That's what the main election ends up being. The primary is so you don't have to do that. So you can choose the guy that you really like, if you have that as an option. And in this case, we have somebody that really does a pretty good job that you're not going to agree with on everything. But wow, what a real human being. So let's keep on that thought process when we're talking to voters, when we're talking to people that we're canvassing and on the phone, is that they're not making the final choice during their primary or their caucus. Remember, they're going off of what they think is the best chance to beat Donald Trump. So go with the person you like, not the same old, and the person that you think is going to be the best or the better able to handle that. Because I don't think um, history has taught us anything positive in that regard. I'll leave you all with that. Thank you for your time, and as always, you know, um, start with your local politics and work your way up. I think that that's important. I was saying this earlier on the podcast. We really need to focus on our local stuff more than putting our trust in a president, somebody to come along. Um, but in this circumstance, this is a very unique, you know, goal oriented, driven individual that can make real change from the top down. That's not a common thing. And most of us are always so worried about this, we forget about our local elections. So pay attention to those things, because I think those matter more and impact us more than most of the general election type stuff that we usually care only when it's time to vote for president. So I'll leave you with that. Remember, your local city, town elections, I would argue, are more important to your direct life. So again, if you can, subscribe, like, and spread the word. Keep going, Yang Gang. Keep doing what you're doing. I am absolutely inspired by all of you, and it keeps me moving as hard as I can to try to make this a reality, because it's our kids' future. It depends on it, but also all of humanity.